In a slum area of Salyasahi Bhubaneswar, there is a young mother named Sukantai. She was in need of money and she was going to sell the property she had. But nothing works, so she decided to sell her son named Budhya Singh to a traveling bracelet dealer for $10. She ordered the bracelet dealer to take care of and train Budhya to work. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the community is holding a demonstration to reject the eviction of their settlement. On the other hand, a man named Barenchi Das, who works as a judo coach, was immediately told by several people to deal with the demonstrators. There, he then told the demonstrators that if the residents whose houses were evicted, they would receive compensation and permanent houses would be built. Hearing Barenchi's words, of course the demonstrators did not immediately believe it, but luckily he was able to convince the demonstrators so that the riots could be resolved. After that, Barenchi went to a slum which turned out to be Sukanti's house complex. There he also took the time to visit Sukanti's house. Sukanti told Barenchi that the roof of her house was leaking and there was no clean water supply. Hearing this, he promised to help her house to be repaired. After that, he asked the whereabouts of Budhya, but Sukanti just silent. Meanwhile, Budhya's condition was very worrying. He was starving, he was not fed by the bracelet dealer and was instead beaten, but Budhya dared to retaliate by throwing a bottle to him and immediately hiding. But damn, Budhya was again caught and beaten until he cried. Soon after that, Barenchi comes to save him. The bracelet dealer refused because he felt he had bought Budhya. Finally, Barenchi replaces the bracelet dealer's money to free Budhya and says he will beat him if he dares to touch Budhya again. The next day, Barenchi's wife, Gita, tells her husband that she wants to have a biological child. Jokingly, he said if Gita already had many children. One day, Barenchi joins the Success Team, an opposition party leader who will run for governor named Putanik. In his campaign, Putanik promised to rebuild the houses of the evicted residents permanently. It certainly immediately received a good response from the community, so that Putanik was immediately proud. And at night, Putanik gives money to Barenchi for helping his campaign. After that, Barenchi visited Budhya, who was being treated in hospital due to a beating from a bracelet dealer. After recovering, Barenchi took Budhya to his mother, but Sukanti wants Budhya to live with him because she doesn't have the money to support Budhya's life. When he get home, Gita rejected if Budhya lived in their house because they had taken care of 22 orphans, but after seeing Budhya's innocence, she became melted and accepted him to live in their house. In the morning, as usual, the children got up to do activity. One child tries to wake Budhya, but he found Budhya was wetting on the bed. This made he get bullied by that child. Do not accept being bullied. Budhya then pushed him till he fall. For his actions, Barenchi punishes Budhya to run around the field and he don't allow to stop until Barenchi tells him to stop. He and his wife then left to take care of their business for hours and forgot about Budhya. When home, one of their children said that since morning Budhya had run and would not stop. Hearing this, Barenchi and Gita panicked. They immediately checked Budhya's condition, but he didn't get tired and laughed instead. At night, he was watching the marathon broadcast on TV. There he thought of Budhya in the field of running. The next day, he invites Budhya for a morning run. They then ran together and from there they became closer. He said that he likes to run. After running, Barenchi takes Budhya to his personal doctor. Barenchi says that Budhya has already run 5 kilometers. It is something very extraordinary, considering Budhya's age. He was only 5 years old. After the doctor checked his condition, it turned out that Budhya's condition was fine. As a reward for Budhya's achievements, Barenchi gives him new shoes. And to make the other children are not jealous, Gita then gives them a sweets. After knowing the talent possessed by Budhya, Barenchi became more focused in guiding Budhya. He even promised Budhya a bicycle if he was excited to train with him. Next, at Bhubaneswar police birthday party, Barenchi asked Putanik for help so that Budhya could appear on the show. With Putanik's help, finally Budhya was able to appear on the show and show his talent for running in front of many people for 7 rounds. Even without drinking water, Budhya managed to complete 7 rounds. Then for his achievements, Budhya flooded with praise. Then Barenchi intends to send Budhya to the best private school in the city by applying for an athlete scholarship, but Budhya was not accepted because his old was still not enough. But Barenchi did not give up. He asked Putanik for help so that Budhya could study at that school. With the help of Putanik, finally Budhya can go to school. After that, Budhya continued to practice running with enthusiasm, starting from a distance of 5 kilometers, 21 kilometers, 25 kilometers, 30 kilometers, and continued to grow until it reached 48 kilometers. Along with how hard Budhya practiced, until the shoe has a hole. Then Budhya's rare talent was smelled by the national newspapers. It has become a topic of discussion among various parties, because according to some circles it is an act of exploitation, considering that Budhya is only 5.5 years old. Budhya's achievements have become the pride of the people of Bhubaneswar. Barenchi then presents him with new shoes. Not only that, Putanik also gave Budhya a bicycle as a gift. He also promised to sponsor him. Next, Barenchi held a religious ceremony to adopt Budhya as a child, and since then Budhya has been legally the son of Barenchi. Sometime later, Gita gave birth to a son named Mohit. One day Barenchi and Gita were visited by a journalist from America who wanted to make a documentary about them. Their Gita shows the medals they got when they were judo athletes. Next, Barenchi intends to register Budhya to take part in the 21-kilometer marathon in Delhi. However, the committee did not allow him to participate in the competition because Budhya was not yet 12 years old. As a result, one of Budhya's sponsors gets angry with him and says if he loses sponsoring a useless child. Hearing this, this, Barenchi became angry and the dispute that occurred became a trend in the news. On the other hand, the Ministry of Child Protection also spoke and said that Barenchi was just trying to be famous and looking for sensations. And on the other hand, Barenchi also held a press conference on the citizens of Bhubaneswar. In the event, he said if Bhutia would break a new record, where he will run a marathon as far as 70 kilometers starting from the city of Puri to Bhubaneswar. Hearing that, the reporters asked about Barenchi's plan, because it is an impossible thing and very risky. Moreover, Bhutia is not even 6 years old. Some parties objected to the plan, because it was too risky for a child of Bhutia's age. Geeta also tried to persuade her husband to cancel the event, but he persisted to hold the event. Further, thanks to Putanik's help, finally the event got permission from the police and there were 400 people who were willing to run with Bhutia. On the other hand, Sukhanti, who now has a boyfriend, saw a billboard about Bhutia who was going to run a 70-kilometer marathon. Sukhanti's boyfriend used this to attract donations to residents under the guise of running the Bhutia marathon. After getting permission, various preparations were then made for the Buddhist marathon. The day before implementation, the Minister of Child Protection contacted the police to conduct a doping test on Bhutia. Luckily, he's tested negative. And finally, the day of the Bhutia marathon arrived. Thousands of people have gathered in the Jagannath temple complex to enliven the event. The priests also prayed for Bhutia so that he would be given smoothness and safety. Exactly at 4:30 a.m., Bhutia started from the Jagannath temple complex accompanied by hundreds of people. Not only that, Bhutia was also escorted by several police, medical teams, and journalists who also took part in capturing the event. Everyone who knew Bhutia cheered him on and watched on television. On the other hand, the Ministry of Child Protection and the Child Protection Commission are increasingly angry with the event because it is considered an act of exploitation of children. On the third day of running a marathon, Bhutia began to feel tired and thirsty until he hallucinated with his favorite iced drink. But Barenchi still doesn't give Bhutia a drink. It made Geeta, who was watching from television, feel disappointed with her husband. After a long run, Bhutia finally arrived at the entrance of the city of Bhubaneswar and needed 5 kilometers again to the finish line. But suddenly Bhutia fainted from dehydration. Therefore, Bhutia immediately received emergency assistance from the medical team. The incident immediately became viral news, and not a few people also criticized the action because it is considered to have exceeded the limit, where a child who is only 6 years old ran as far as 65 kilometers. After Bhutia received treatment, he then came to his senses and in front of many people he said if he wasn't tired and would run 100 kilometers. Next, Barenchi and the residents of Bhubaneswar celebrated Bhutia's success in breaking the record by running a distance of 65 kilometers. On the other hand, the Ministry and the Child Protection Commission, who did not like this, asked the police to pick up Bhutia from Barenchi's house. In the morning, the Minister of Child Protection conveyed to the media the results of Bhutia's examination at the hospital. Doctors diagnosed Bhutia with anemia, malnutrition, and an abnormal heart rate. Therefore, the government forbade Bhutia to run a marathon until he was 12 years old, and if violated, the organizers and Barenchi as coaches will get criminal penalties. But the minister's statement was opposed by various parties, including the personal Dr. Barenchi who had been handling Bhutia's health. He said the statement could not be accounted for because he knew Bhutia's condition, as well as Putanik, who appealed to the government to support and facilitate Bhutia's talent. Because of this action, the community then staged a demonstration in front of the offices of the Ministry and the Child Protection Commission. There they asked the Ministry to lift the ban on running against Bhutia. Following up on demonstrators' requests, the government held a consultation meeting. However, what was discussed in the meeting did not discuss solutions to Bhutia's problems, but instead the main minister wants his party to win so that it can maintain power and continue to engage in corruption. The other side, Barenchi was also accused of exploiting children and embezzling donations collected from the community for Bhutia by the head of the Child Protection Commission. But it was Barenchi who felt he didn't do that, went straight to the chairperson of the Child Protection Commission and beat him up. Then Sukhanti asks for Barenchi's promise to repair the house. There he says he will help Sukhanti if he has money. After that, Bhutia was brought home by Sukhanti, but Barenchi instead accused her and her boyfriend of reporting him to the police on charges of embezzlement of funds and torture of Bhutia. But in the end, he was released after Barenchi's post-mortem, and Barenchi's balance was only a few tens of dollars and not what he was charged for. Then the government took over Bhutia from Barenchi and also from Sukhanti. Bhutia was then placed in the government-owned athlete house and was not allowed to run until the age of 12. Knowing that, Barenchi was disillusioned with the actions taken by the government, and under the pouring rain he cried over what had happened. A few days later, Barenchi visited Bhutia at the government-owned athlete house. There it is seen that they miss each other. When he will to leave, Bhutia forbids him and asks Barenchi to accompany him a little longer, but the government-owned athlete house guard only gave him a few minutes. On New Year's Eve, Barenchi celebrates New Year's Eve with his family and foster children happily, and it is inversely proportional to the condition of Bhutia, who feels lonely. And that night there was someone who wanted to meet Barenchi, but suddenly that mysterious person shoots him to death. The news of Barenchi's death from being shot by an unknown person shocked many and became a trending topic. And on Barenchi's funeral day, everyone looked sad and lost, including Bhutia, who was also crying.